Okay, come closer. I'm going to talk about something that's a little bit taboo, and I know you're not supposed to because people don't want to hear about it, but there's part of me that's actually excited to broach the subject of reconciliation. So, if we go back to where this all started, I think it's important to note that when people came to settle in North America, there was genocide. And the circumstances in people's homelands that made them have to leave and come to North America looking for a new life, the situations were fraught with trauma and tragedy there as well. And what we don't talk about very often is the cost of that leaving. And so that's where Indigenous wisdom is so necessary for our health. And I'm not talking about just the Indigenous person, I'm talking for every single person who's alive on the planet. So when we have to leave our homeland and leave the connection of our Indigenous roots, because going far enough back, we all come from an Indigenous group of people from somewhere, the thing that we don't recognize is that we became separate from that deeper philosophy. It's the way of being that is intrinsic for each of us to feel like we have a place of belonging. There is a wisdom in the Indigenous cultures from around the world that all honor life as something that's sacred, that it lives in the plants, in the animals, in the earth, in the rocks, in the two-legged, the four-legged, the creepy crawlies, the ones with wings, the finned ones that swim. All of life is part of this woven connection of support, community, relationship, and sacredness. Because modernity is cursed with the false notion that we're individuals and we're autonomous, whereas a more holistic way of looking at things, or systemic, is to recognize that we're all interdependent on one another. So the curse is that we think that we're individual, and therefore we feel alienated, isolated, separate, and there is a void that's created that we do not talk about. That is why we have a consumer culture. There is a deep emptiness inside, and the only socially acceptable way to fill that up has been to buy more and more and more and try to feed that bottomless pit because it can't be fed from the outside. We're missing deep connection inside to something that gives us a context of belonging and connection. So the idea of reconciliation is to say, what is the wound that we as settlers have carried from the generations before us, from the time they arrived, and how do we heal that? And when we do heal that, or step towards it, because it's never a done deal, we're all works in progress, but as we step towards that and embrace us, then we have a greater capacity for stepping out of this very intellectual basis of judging things as right and wrong and what has value and what doesn't have value. Modern society is in need of having a system where the value of making things better for yourself, for the lives of the people around you, for the planet, has to become as valued or more valued than the goods and services that are offered that actually create destruction, isolation, and disharmony for us as a species and for the planet and everything that comes in contact with us. Not to sound too grandiose, but it's a bit of a big deal. I, as a white person of privilege who's carried so much shame around that in my life, want to step out and say, please join me. Like, isn't it time that we take the wisdom that's been in other cultures and try to embrace that in our own culture, which is deplete of spirit and authenticity. I welcome that back, and I'd love for you to join me and bless all the singers, the dancers, the poets, the storytellers, the wise, crazy elders and shamans of every culture around the world. Yeah, may we be compassionate with ourselves and each other, and step towards the wisdom that's there to be offered for the taking. So please join me as we do that. I think this is a fantastic opportunity.